We are now a couple weeks out from the election, and the Democrats are starting to realize, they backed the wrong horse. Bill Maher takes it one step further, calling out Democrats using a rather disparaging term, which I'm going to wait 15 more seconds to say. Anyway, Bill Maher says Democrats blew the 2024 election with woke issues. Stop screaming at people. In fact, many outlets have highlighted this. Stupid Democrats need to ditch identity politics. And in it, he brings up a circumstance around Seth Moulton, another Democrat. Moulton said, I am concerned that my daughter will get run over by a male or formerly male athlete. And I'm supposed to be afraid to say that as a Democrat. It resulted in a resignation of one of his top aides. And it's now become a talking point of the left. John Oliver comes out with this viral clip where he lies. These people, they have no stats, they have no data, they just lie. And he says there's no issue with trans. It's very weird that you care about it in the first place. Okay, well, I'm going to do this. First, let's talk about what Bill Maher is saying, why he's calling the Democrats retarded offspring of inbred royalty. That's what he said. YouTube, I don't know if they're going to like that. But that's what he said. And I'm going to report what he said. Okay? This is a story from the New York Post. I'll play this quick clip for you. And we have the full segment here, which I'll play some of.
Democrats have become like a royal family that, because of so much incest, has unfortunately had children who are retarded.
They believe that?
And the same thing can happen to ideas if they are also conceived in an atmosphere of intellectual incest. Maybe take the clothespins off your noses and actually converse with the other half of the country. Stop screaming at people to get with the program and instead make a program worth getting with.
So as I've explained quite a bit, for those of you who actually watch, and I have the full segment here, it's 7 minutes long. We'll go through it. It's very good, and I want to break some of this stuff down. Democrats have become completely isolated. And so the way I described it several years ago is imagine there's a whirlpool and everyone's swirling around it. As you get closer to the middle, it spins faster and faster, but eventually it slingshots people out. You don't actually get sucked down into the abyss. Some do, I guess. And so that's someone like me. I was a Democrat, liberal, and as they got crazier and crazier, I get ejected from it. And that's true for a lot of people. Take a look at Free Press, Barry Weiss and her cohorts, or colleagues. People are just thrown out. Now I'm seeing a lot of people, professional athletes, celebrities, people who were never super political, now backing Donald Trump because Democrats have become insane. One example I like to give is the word Wimixin. You heard that right. Wimixin. Let me say this again. Wimixin. Okay. For those of you who know the word, you're laughing because you know what I'm talking about. The rest of you are like, Tim, I don't know what that is. Right. There was a point a few years ago where liberals said WOMXN is the inclusive and required way to say women, Wimexin, because it was inclusive of all women, not just biological females. The response was that actually it's exclusionary because trans women are women and you don't need a special word for it. And so it went from, in the span of a couple of weeks, being the appropriate term, then the not appropriate term. So how do you even keep track with how you're not supposed to offend somebody? That is what Bill Maher is saying, is when it's incestuous. The ideas are mashed together in psychotic ways. They simultaneously say war is bad while cheering on the war in Ukraine. It makes no sense. Well, let me play a little bit of what Bill Maher had to say. I don't care for much of the stuff in the beginning, but let's play this.
They live here, and they actually see women and people of color, and it doesn't look like some patriarchal racist nightmare. Do problems remain pertaining to racism and sexism? Of course. But a poll last year asked, if America is the greatest country in the world, more blacks and Hispanic Americans agreed with that than the white progressives. It asked if racism is built into our society. White progressives agreed with that at higher levels than black and Hispanic people. It asked if government should increase border security. Same result. Hispanic Americans are less okay with illegal immigration than whitey.
Yep.
The votes are in.
We saw that on the southern border in the Rio Grande Valley. Areas that were traditionally Democrat flipped Republican because of the border issue.
They don't want your pity. And black people can't afford to indulge rich white people's need to endlessly flagellate themselves. They just want prices to go down and good jobs and the police when you call them.
Indeed,
black
they
people,
do.
They're just like us.
Democrats are racist. Oh, there's Cuomo clapping along. Get with it.
But they don't need to. Have you seen my "In this house we believe" lawn sign? See, it says right on it, we believe in science. Right, which is why you demanded no one even debate whether COVID could have escaped from the one lab in the one city where they were studying it. How far-fetched.
Where were you on that,
The
Bill?
New York Times called it racist.
Indeed, they did.
Democrats have become like a royal family that, because of so much incest, has unfortunately had children who are retarded. And the same thing can happen to ideas if they are also conceived in an atmosphere of intellectual incest. Maybe take the clothespins off your noses and actually converse with the other half of the country.
Nope.
Stop screaming at people to get with the program and instead make a program worth getting with. What good is liberalism if you don't win elections? Last week, Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton said, "I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a formerly male athlete."
He said by a male athlete or formerly male athlete, but they cut that out for some reason. I don't know why.
But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. Yes, there's the problem in a nutshell.
Indeed.
Because Congressman Moulton sounds reasonable to me, but his campaign manager immediately resigned in protest. Let me make this as plain as I can to the smart people. The campaign manager who resigned, yeah, let that person go.
Should have been fired.
Marginalize that guy.
Seth Moulton, I believe, ran unopposed, too.
Try making too woke be a cancelable offense. It's important for America to have a center-left party, and for that party to be competitive. And a good first step toward that goal would be to make the voters not want to punch you in the face. I will conclude.
Jeez.
I will conclude by saying the reason I'm so mad at the Democrats is because as a voter, the issues that were important to me were democracy and the environment. And now, there's no one to champion or defend either of them because you, with your aggressively anti-common sense agenda and shitty...
You know, I got to say this. There is someone to champion democracy, and his name is Donald Trump. You see, for me in this country, I watch them levy false charges at Donald Trump. And I know you all know this, but for those who stumble upon this video and are new to this channel, Donald Trump was charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records in furtherance of a crime. That requires an underlying crime. There isn't one. In which case, those charges are 34 misdemeanors, which had already are already past the statute of limitations. In order to charge Trump, they had to claim there's an underlying crime that he was never charged for, and then ask the jurors to make it up. As for the civil fraud, the bank said he didn't defraud them. They said that they made money and they were very happy and wanted to keep working with him. As for the sexual assault liability charge, that was a new law passed just so one person could sue Donald Trump 30 years after the fact with no evidence. And they all believe it because the liberal worldview is downstream from hoaxes. And Bill, you're mad because you lost, but you still live in a world downstream from hoaxes. Let's throw it to that story he brought up. I'm going to break down for all of you exactly why. This is a great issue that Bill Maher has referenced. The transgender sporting issue turned out to be a sleeper issue for a lot of people and moved the needle more than even I expected. Now me, I don't care if adults want to do whatever for the most part. I'm a liberal, you know what I mean? Like at least what liberals used to be. So I don't know that we want to completely legalize all drugs. I am not for absolute deregulation. I'm looking at RFK Jr. talking about regulating more, and I'm like, let's go, baby. He's a liberal, like me. I want to regulate tartrazine in foods. Not allowed. Red 40, not allowed. None of that. I got to cover this story later where the New York Times is like, RFK's wrong. There's only biphenylamine tetrazole or whatever the word is. I forgot. It's BHT, they call it. A lab-made chemical for freshness. And it's just like, yeah, that's what he's talking about. Why are we eating that stuff? Anyway. So I'm fairly liberal, right? And there's a lot of conservatives who say that even if you're 18 and older, you shouldn't be able to get sex change operations or whatever because it's amputating healthy body parts. Me, I'm still fairly more libertarian on there's a give and take, but I'm not going to say decriminalize all these drugs. And so the argument then becomes if someone is suffering from like heroin addiction, we don't say you're allowed to do heroin if you're over 18 because that kills you. You die. And so I'm okay with some regulations. Here's the story. Seth Moulton faces protest in hometown after controversial trans remarks. Now, this is a story unto itself, but it's also a really good example of the idiocy and psychosis of Democrats. And I'm going to prove it to you. Newsweek reports Rep. Seth Moulton faced a protest in Salem, Massachusetts on Sunday after he recently made controversial remarks about transgender females participating in women's sports. I can't stand these people. Bill Maher's right. Okay, there is something wrong with them. They're developmentally disabled. A transgender female is a biological female, ovaries and all that, who wants to be a man. A transgender female is more commonly called a trans man. Okay, a transgender male is a male that identifies as a woman and wants to be female but is not. You see how they mix it all up because they're not smart enough to break down words. So anyway, in a New York Times article published earlier this month, Moulton said Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges Americans face. No one issue lost us this election, but there is an exit polling that shows that cultural issues played an outsized role. We lost in part because we shame and belittle too many opinions held by too many voters that needs to stop. So he went on to say, just speaking authentically as a dad, he says, I don't want my two daughters getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete, but I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. And I think that we have the better Hill has the full quote. Newsweek doesn't. What did he say? Blah, 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 blah. I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. So he ends up having a top aide quit. You know what? Here's a story from Pink News. 2 Democrats accused of playing blame game after launching attacks on trans athletes. Okay, let's entertain this. And then I'll throw it to our good friend John Oliver, who keeps people trapped in a cult for clicks. Disgusting. So House Rep Tom Suozzi of New York and Seth Moulton claim that Democrats made an error in supporting transgender sportsmen and women. Well, the bigger issue for Moulton was everything. Stop being so scared to offend. And he used one example. They're going to say only 1.14% of the U.S. adult population identify as transgender, while about 0.6% of youngsters do. That's actually incorrect and inverted. It's 0.6% of adults and 1.14% of young people. Young people are more likely to identify as trans. They got that wrong. Meaning it's hardly a pressing problem. It's in fact a very pressing problem, and I'll prove it. Seth Moulton ran uncontested in the election this week, but his male and formerly male comment quickly attracted criticism. And they go on to say that despite efforts by both reps to lay blame for the bruising election defeat at the feet of trans athletes, research has suggested that most U.S. voters don't view the issue as a priority. False. That was actually the, let me pull this up from the Wall Street Journal. The October 13th, 2024, transgender sports is a 2024 sleeper issue. Democratic, and this is from October 13th. There was the New York Times, let me do this one. A New York Times undecided voters, and they talked with 13 undecided voters, asking them who they voted for and why. And let me see if I can just skip way ahead, because I think it's like the last one, actually. Here we go. McLean voted for Romney in 2020. A write-in said, I shocked myself and voted for Trump. No one tell my family I was so impressed by J.D. Vance, the way he carried himself and how normal he appeared. I think I became radicalized on the men and women's sports issue. The New York Times talked to 13 people. It's a small number, but this woman said, that radicalized me. She said, the ad that said Kamala represents they, them, and Trump represents you was so compelling. While Trump is deranged, he represented normalcy somehow to me. All right, let's throw it to our good friend, John Oliver, who is a smarmy, lying scumbag.
ads on that one issue. And it was frustrating to see the Harris campaign fail to formulate a response, especially because it's pretty easy to do. Watch, I'll do it for you right now. As we've discussed before, there are vanishingly few trans girls competing in high schools anywhere. Even if there were more, trans kids, like all kids, vary in athletic ability, and there is no evidence they pose any threat to safety or fairness. It is very weird for you to be so focused on this subject. And finally, if you genuinely want to address the biggest concern for most girls who play high school sports, you'd be less worried about this and more about the creepy assistant volleyball coach who keeps liking their posts on fucking Instagram. Ads on that.
So it's fascinating. The creepy guy who keeps posting that's not an issue for, I mean, it's a general issue that teachers may be abusive towards children, but that's not the principal concern for anybody in an explosive manner, I would say, in an outsized manner. That is to say, generally, always, we are concerned about that. Let me stress this for John Oliver.
This and more about the creepy assistant volleyball coach who keeps liking their posts on fucking Instagram.
So are you saying that Democrats support pedophiles? Is the argument that we should be upset that Democrats are allowing pedophiles into schools? Because I got news for you, John Oliver. That's actually on the top of the list as well. These books that they're trying to give to kids is a pressing issue. So when you're talking about those teachers, that has also been a big issue that y'all have acted like it's not happening. But let's play this game. Let's go back to his arguments.
Ads on that one issue. And it was...
This is from his show where it points out Politico saying Kamala allows transgender athletes on girls' sports.
Frustrating to see the Harris campaign fail to formulate a response, especially because it's pretty easy to do. Watch.
When you're lying, it's easy to do, and I'm going to debunk it all so easily.
I'll do it for you right now. As we've discussed before, there are vanishingly few trans girls competing in high schools.
Vanishingly few.
Anywhere. Even if there were more, trans kids, like all kids, vary in athletic ability, and there is no evidence they pose any threat to safety.
They vary in athletic ability, male or female, okay.
Or fairness. It is very weird for you to be so focused on this subject. And finally,
it is very weird for you to be focused on the subject is not an argument in any fact basis. It's an attack on your emotions. And if you're a weak-willed person, by all means, fall for it.
If you genuinely want to address...
And we got the last point. Hey, let's play a game, John. It's called, I don't know, research. Percent of young people that are trans. So we have this this link, which is, you're gonna open it for me? The Williams Institute. 1.4% of youths aged 13 to 17 identify as transgender. Adults at 0.5. This means around 300,000 young people in this country identify as trans. All right. My question then is, of that number, how many of them are transgender males who want to be women? So these are people who are born boys. They have boy parts, more muscle mass, lower Q angle, stronger, denser bones, more fast twitch muscle, all the stuff we know. Okay. The answer is 38.5%. So just north of 1/3, a little bit more than a third. All right. The average number of students per public school in the United States is 526, which means of these young people, we are looking at around 1 in 80 that are going to be transgender. Maybe 1 in 80 is, I don't know, not so nice, right? But if we're looking at 1.4% of 13 to 17-year-olds who are trans, okay, and we've got 526, that is, well, if we're going to round, it's going to be between 5 or 6 in the school that are, in any school on average, that are trans. Now, obviously, the number is going to be more pronounced in liberal areas than conservative areas. So let's just do hard averages. We're looking at 5 to 6 students per school, any school, anywhere in this country, on average, who will identify as transgender, which means we're looking at around 2 that will be male who want to be women. All right. And last but not least, from 6 to 17, 53.8% of children in the age group played on a sports team. It's down from 58.4%. In high school, it's 38.8% of boys. However, they say in 2022, 6 to 17-year-olds. So if we're talking about that large number, it could be that 6 to 13 younger kids play a lot more sports. And then once you're 13 to 17, many stop playing sports. Okay. Now let's just break the number down. If we're looking at, on average at every school, 2 kids who are male who want to be female and half play sports, that means every school may experience 1 male on the women's team, on the girls' team. Now, of course, that is not absolute, because we've already seen in several instances, one school in Connecticut had 2 males playing on the girls' team, and some have none. But it is an absurdity to say it's increasingly rare and doesn't exist. Now, I don't think y'all are stupid. And so I don't know why I'd have to explain to you why there is an increased risk in boys playing against girls. It's a weird thing for John Oliver to claim because it's patently obvious to anybody who has eyes. Biologic males have more grip strength from birth than females. This is a fact. Males have more collagen in their skins. They have a slighter Q angle, meaning less prone to injuries of the hips, knees, and ankles. They have a higher center of gravity. They can jump higher. More fast twitch muscle means more striking power, more jumping power. It is an absurdity, more bone density. None of these things are to disparage women. Men don't make life. Women do. It's an incredibly important thing. But for some reason, there is this desire, this demand that men and women be identical in every way, and they are not. In fact, previous to the early 90s, there was no requirement in medical testing between the sexes. And then what would happen is doctors would give women painkillers that didn't work on women, and the women would be like, this hurts really bad, and they'd say, women are so weak. And then finally they were like, we realized something. Certain painkillers don't work on women the same way they work on men because men and women are different. Surprise, surprise. With this passing of the law, they realized, actually, it's just not working. There are ways to make women not feel pain using different medications, and men work with better. And I'll tell you this too. Different medications work on everybody differently. I got to tell you, when I get like opiates for painkillers, it does nothing for the pain. Nothing. Me, I'm an NSAID kind of guy, okay? If I get like ibuprofen, pain's gone in an instant. If I get some kind of opiate from my doctor, it does nothing. It makes you high. And I'm like, is that what it's supposed to do? I'm still in agony, but my brain is also like, anyway, here's the point. Me, I'm more liberal. So if you're an adult, I don't care if you want to get your ears pierced, your tongue forked, nose piercing, you want to get horn implants, man, I don't care. But we're not bringing this into schools. We're not giving these books to kids. It's not the game we're going to play. Okay? You can't give kids drugs. You can't give them tattoos. There are some things we accept and some things we don't. Tattoos, they say, like if a parent approves of a tattoo, a kid can get a tattoo. That's just skin art. That's just, it's a bad idea in my opinion. Plastic surgery, I think, is a bad opinion too. But permanently altering a child's body so that they may not ever be able to reproduce is insane. No, I digress. The issue at hand. Oh, and to address once again, just very easily for John Oliver, there's no risk, is what he said. No risk. My guys, you need only look up the science on the Q angle. That is the ratio from the femur bone and the hips down to the knees, I think is what it's called. And I've researched this a bit as an athlete myself, skateboarding, and looking at the differences between males and females in skateboarding, which is clearly obvious. A higher center of gravity will allow a man to jump higher as they're already carrying center of gravity higher. So when they jump and they pull their legs up, they'll get more clearance. This is why often women struggle to do tricks as high as men. It's not so much about jumping power, though jumping power is a factor. It's because men can pull their legs up to their center of gravity, whereas women's center of gravity is a lot lower to the ground. It's that you can't pull your legs up as high. Now, many say, yes, but women will have a better balance with a lower center of gravity. I got news for you. Men can also crouch, which lowers your center of gravity. Men with more fast twitch muscle and a slimmer hip ratio means they're less prone to soft tissue injury in their hips and knees. If you add a male player to a female team, you are increasing with the raw power of the male athlete, regardless of the medications they're on. You are increasing the likelihood of injury, or at the very least, that athlete has a lower chance of injury compared to the female athletes. This is why men and women play on different teams, period. But you don't need me to tell you that. So shout out to Bill Maher, but I'm going to wrap it up there. Next segment's coming up at 3 on this channel. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know, become a member over at Timcast.com, and we will see you all then.